This week's video has a bit of story behind it. I had 3 days to paint all these models for a D&D adventure. From the start, I knew oil washes would be a must to help me get the models ready in 2 steps. Also, Marco's video on Osharan came to mind, so I thought why not try out rendering the initial colors with my airbrush and see if I can save some time. I don't have the skills or that good of an airbrush, so let's see what I can do. To mix my paints, I used a battery blister pack and just added some water to dilute them. But before jumping to the model, I made sure to test the flow of paint. Marco uses a 0.2 needle. My airbrush, which has seen better days, has a 0.5 one, so I quickly realized that small and medium details would have to be painted by brush. However, some models were composed of mainly one element, so for these first 2 models I thought I could at least get all the ropes done, before picking out a couple other details and have them ready for an oil wash. Once I was done with the color, a spare glass of water was used to clean up the airbrush, but make sure to lower the PSI or you'll have water flying out everywhere. Like I mentioned, due to a lack of skill, my renditions were limited to zenithal highlights. As far as the ropes goes, yes, I did get some smooth creamy white tone, but at the same time it turned out quite bland, and I regret not having went for a more creative shadow tone like purple, which would have contrasted great with the gold details I would paint after. But I made sure not to repeat that mistake moving forward. The application of the initial color is done first from below. It will be much easier afterwards to go around the model from above, and I want to avoid any overspray were I to begin to insist in the hopes of reaching the innermost parts. I got a bit more creative with my colors moving onwards, mixing sunny skin tone alongside some purple. Every layer was applied at least a 45-degree angle, so as to leave the shadows untouched. And as the mix got lighter, I also upped the angle of spray. I did push all of my renditions to an almost white, since the oil washing will add some color to them in the end. While keeping the airbrush away from the model made it spray wider and with less precision, it also made sure I got no spider webbing from overspraying. However, by angling my airbrush straight from above, I was able to keep as much of the base tone in the shadows as I could, as well as some of the midtones. Like I mentioned, my airbrush skills could only take me so far, and some brushwork would be required for the other base colors. Apart from the 2 thin coats of base color, I sketched some highlights very roughly. As you can see in the footage, this was no more than a minute of work per section, or 5 minutes per model overall. The rough texture will contrast nicely with the smooth transitions from the airbrush over on the skin, and help differentiate one element from another. So far, I can say that I did save a lot of time by using the airbrush to get those base coats over the element which occupied most of the model itself. While I could do better by spending more time and using a brush, I was running against the clock, so this would have to do. However, I'll come clean and say that there were some models where the airbrush wouldn't have helped me at all, be it as I mentioned by my lack of skill or the tool itself, so I simply gave them their base coats keeping the color count low. But now I can move on to step 2. Oil washing is something I'm well versed in. On my videos I've covered thin applications as well as thick applications alike. You can refer to this video above for a bit more info. Today I'm using different color mixes and different consistencies, but all models will be covered from head to toes to begin with. I'll then leave them to the side for an hour or so to have a snack. This will be enough time to have the solvents evaporate and allow the oils to get a slight grip or tinting over the paint. There is no exact recipe to mixing oil paints with solvents, since different colors will behave in different ways, but the working method compared to normal washes is reductive instead of additive. Right now I have too much, but that's because I will clean the paint from the raised areas instead of trying to get it just on the recesses. Still, more dilute mixes for highly textured surfaces can be used in the same manner as any other wash, but today I'm working on models which lack very pronounced ridges and creases, and this overall application with a thicker mix will result in a more organic shading after the cleanup stage. For the cleanup, I'll get some solvent and allow a Q-tip to absorb it all around, but we'll get rid of any excess with a paper towel. I'll do this very gently since I want the Q-tip to be slightly moist. By lightly going over the model, the solvent will reactivate and dilute the oils, which will allow the Q-tip to pick it up from the raised surfaces. By having a controlled amount of solvent on the Q-tip, I avoid any excess dripping onto the recesses and washing paint away from them, leaving me with some defined shadows and clean raised details. Over on bigger models, I can begin with some makeup sponges. Once again, we want to go lightly and slowly pick up the oils from the raised details. The sponge will work wonders on those white spaces, slowly creating gradients towards the shadows. It is fine if you can't get all the way into the shadow areas, it'll just up the contrast in the end. Finally, I'll go back to the Q-tips to remove the last layer of paint over on the brightest points. It would seem that the sponge already removed as much paint as possible, but that hour or so I left the oils to set and get a grip creates this final layer which is not even close to dry, but will still require some reactivation with solvents in order to be cleaned. In conclusion, I did manage to get the models ready in time. It took me an afternoon to do all the base coating, maybe 3 to 4 hours, and the next day's morning for the oil washing, which even with the hour of set time before cleanup, it didn't take me more than 2 hours in total. While I have stayed away from airbrushing since I want my videos to serve everyone, I do admit it helped to get the project ready in time, and I will recur to it again next time I need to have a personal project ready which I don't need to have painted to the best of my abilities. I would also like to get my hands on a more precise airbrush in the future to better try out Marco's painting approach. In the end, I'm pleased with the results. I was able to get the models ready and I learned something along the way. And I hope you did also. So thank you for watching the whole video and I hope to see you for the next one.